Okay, so again, welcome everyone, and let me show you what we have in store for today. This is your list of presenters, and this is the order that we're going to go in. Um, so let me just really quickly give you a quick introduction to myself. My name is Sally Potter, and I teach in the Humanities Division. I teach in the EMLS Linguistics Department, and I also sometimes teach English 1A. And I've been working and teaching online classes for over a decade now, and I've seen a lot of different trends, come and go in online education. And of course, what we're dealing with now is kind of a new environment, but some older things are coming up as well. Um, and just as we transition to our online emergency online delivery in March, we had, just in the humanities division, especially in the English department, we had, a lot of instructors who were really unsure about what they were, how they were designing their classes and how they were setting up their Canvas modules, even though they had done the online training. In some cases, they had gone through the full certification, but just they weren't very experienced with the online, with online teaching. And so we started to just do a couple of different little workshops in-house in the English department, where we just, shared, little 10-minute walkthroughs of our Canvas shells. And it was really, really kind of fun to be the sharer. And it was also really cool to see what different people were doing. We got a lot of great ideas. So we decided to go ahead and expand that. And I reached out colleagues across campus and put this panel together. So I'm really excited about it. And I am also excited to see what they're going to bring to the table this morning. So really excited about that. In terms of questions, we don't have a whole lot of spare time because we have a lot of content to get through. But what we're planning today is I have a little bit of a sort of an introduction that I'm going to give you, cover some sort of basics of online education and equity, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jackie, and then we'll go through the presenters of the panel. And they'll have a turn to show, each one will have a turn to show some of their Canvas shells to you. And I know that there's going to be a lot of questions and discussion that's going to come up, but we are just very short on time. We are going to do our best to try to answer questions as they come up in the chat, but do know that it's really, really hard to answer questions as we're talking. And we don't want to kind of get derailed on, a question that kind of leads us into a different direction. So we'll try our best to answer questions within the chat while it's not our turn to talk. What we're going to do is do our sharing, and then we're trying to reserve about 15 minutes at the end for an activity, for a breakout group breakout-group discussion for you. And then if we have time at the very end to come back, then and that will generate some more questions. The breakout room discussion will. And then if we have time at the very end, hopefully we will, then that will be the time for questions. And of course, I'll have time to stick around. This is the last thing I'm doing today, other than my actual classes that I'm teaching. So I'll be sticking around today and I can hang out with you and answer any questions as we go forward. So just want to put this up here, and we're not going to do introductions as we go. We'll just hand off to the next person. Okay, so I do want to give you a sort of an orientation for those of you who are kind of new to online teaching. I know that many of you have been online teachers before, and like I said, I have been teaching online classes for many years. I have taught online certification classes to maybe even some of you who are in this session right now. And so I've had a lot of conversations and seen a lot of different kind of conversations happening around online education. And things are different now, okay? Before, you know, we had this shutdown, there really was this sort of separation. And I was looking for and kind of searching out places where we could inject the equity conversation into online education, but there wasn't, I really couldn't find any material there. There really weren't any resources there. The only discussions about access were really about accessibility. So for students who have disabilities and how to make the materials accessible to them, but there weren't any conversations about how to make materials equitable for everyone, other than just some general kind of universal design for learning discussions, which were not, you know, just kind of very surface level. At the same time, you know, our success rates, you may have heard at Fresno City College, between our online course offerings and our face-to-face course offerings were very similar. They're, you know, and statewide, and it has been the trend that online courses have lower success rates than face-to-face classes. But at Fresno City College, they're getting, you know, very, very similar, almost like a negligible difference. You know, and of course, that's a testament to our hardworking online teachers, but it's also due to the fact that students knew what they were getting into and they were choosing it. They knew that, you know, that what they were choosing was going to be more work for them, and they were self-selecting into those classes, and they knew what they were getting into. Of course, now that's not the case. And so now we really are, you know, although this is a terrible situation, and it is really, you know, negatively impacting so many of our students, this really is an opportunity for us to explore ways that we can truly make online classes and online learning really as equitable, or approaching the equitability that face-to-face classes have. And, you know, that really should be our goal. So when we think about the type of student that needs online classes, these are students who cannot take classes on campus. They have other responsibilities that prevent them from doing so. And those students deserve the right to an education. So we owe it to them to make our online classes just as rich a learning environment and just as easily accessible for them as any other course. And so that is sort of my mission here, is to kind of dig into that and show you some ways, and hopefully we're going to highlight some of these ways that we can start to do that. This is not something that is easy to do in just one, you know, like one quick go over. You know, you could just kind of look at your class and make some little tweaks and changes and have everything, you know, in a few hours done. No, this is a process. It's a very long process. Lots of different things that you can do. It takes a long time, but hope, and we're all in different stages, you know, along this journey. But hopefully, we can all kind of take steps to improve our courses. And I know that this will, once we get back to on campus, this will translate into your face-to-face classes as well. These online or these equity-minded practices that I want to highlight for you, these come from the Center for Urban Education, the syllabus review document that they shared with us. So Fresno City College has a partnership with CUE. And I do have the link here. As soon as I'm done talking, I'll put it in the chat for you so you can see the document that I'm referring to. But these are kind of the principles of online or sorry, these are the principles of equity-minded syllabus review, according to Q. And they focus on the syllabus because the syllabus is kind of like the first thing that students see. It's kind of the first impression that students have. But it's not the only place in a course where these practices should be happening, right? But if you can kind of look at your syllabus first, then you're going to tend to make these changes in other places in your course. So just some, some quick examples. And I'm not going to, go over this too much, but just some kind of quick things here. Demystifying. Let's see here. I do want to bring up real quick. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, here we go. No, that's not what I want to do. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. So for demystifying college policies and practices, that would just be something like explaining office hours. I'm going to show you an example of that. Explaining finals week, how that works, using student-friendly language, explaining things like drop policy, your attendance requirements. So things that first-generation college students wouldn't necessarily know. Welcoming students are going to be things like having a homepage that's warm and inviting, using welcome letters, videos at the start of the semester that have a warm tone, having a homepage that has messages or images that have a picture of the instructor that's kind of warm and welcoming, validating students' ability to be successful, doing things like sending kudos to students when they do something well, explicitly telling them that they belong in college, maybe having a page at the end of each module where they reflect on what they have accomplished that week or in that module and give them some kudos. Creating partnerships, things like checking on students when they miss work, asking if they need help, designing group assignments where they're responsible to each other and for each other, intentionally collaborating with tutorial, sharing resources with students, and then working with DSPS, counseling, referring students outside of your course to those programs, and then having like a Q&A cafe or a forum for students to ask questions of each other. Representing a range of racial ethnic experiences, could be things just like using course materials that are written by Black and Indigenous people of color and women experts in your field. So not just choosing those white males all the time, including assignments that reflect the culture of our diverse population. So that students can see themselves in the course material. And then finally, deconstructing. This is kind of the hardest one. And I think that this comes with the accumulation of all of these practices. But it could just also be doing things like just using little images and quotes in your course and your syllabus, using these images, anecdotes, quotes that make students feel like that they and people like them are college students and that they belong in college. Okay, so as we go through, and as I'm going to turn it over to Jackie in just a minute, what I'd like you to do is just kind of in your mind think about when we go through the panel. We're going to have our breakout groups, and we'll go back to the slide, and I'll ask you to just really quickly introduce yourself. Just, everybody can just kind of say what kind of experience they've had with online teaching. Everyone's had a little bit now, or, tiny bit at least. And then thinking about at least one thing that you saw today that you want to incorporate into your class. And, how are you going to adapt it? What are you going to do? How are you going to take this thing that you saw today and make it your own? And then what are some other ideas? So what idea did you have today maybe that sparked a new idea that you have that you want to share with the group? And then once we have the breakout groups, hopefully we can come all back together, and then maybe we can get some better ideas together. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now, and then I will turn it over to Jackie.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Hopefully you can see my Canvas shell. And I'm really going to be focusing on those first two principles that Sally mentioned, demystifying and welcoming, but mostly on demystifying and what I'm going to show you today. So what you're seeing here is my landing page, and I'm actually going to skip over most of this because other presenters are going to touch on these in more detail. But I do have a warm landing page that I update weekly for my students. I do have a welcome video for them to view when they first start the class, and links to take them into the different class activities. And I arrange my class into weekly modules. And so I like to have a couple different ways that the students can get to the things that they need in the class. So I have a button that I keep on the homepage that takes them right to the modules. And I also leave the modules link active so that they can see it over here. So let's go ahead and move into the modules. And what I've decided to do with my course since the transition to fully online learning, so I have I've been teaching online classes, at least one every semester for the last 5 years, but I added this in the last year after we went totally online. Because students were really feeling a lot of anxiety about starting online classes and doing something that they had not done before. And so I've set up my first week of class really just to be an orientation to Canvas and to my class, to the expectations, to the kinds of activities that we're going to be doing. So we don't really get into any specific course content until week 2. But by the end of these first 2 modules in week 1, they will have practiced using the tools that I'm going to have them use most frequently in Canvas as we move through the semester. So they will have used a survey. I use surveys throughout the semester to get feedback on how students feel about their progress towards the learning outcomes. I will use the quiz tool because I do my midterm and final exam in quizzes. I will have them do a basic text entry assignment because I use those for our reading responses, a Turnitin assignment submission since we use those for essays, and a discussion forum post since we use the discussions weekly to practice things and keep in touch with the class. So by the time they finish this orientation, they will have learned a lot of the different aspects of Canvas that they're going to be expected to use for higher stakes assignments later on. So you'll see here, I have my start here, let's get acquainted module, and then immediately underneath it, I have this short module of pre-course assessments. And what we're doing in these is just getting to know more about the class. I start all of my modules with an overview page. And so the overview page just gives them some general ideas of what they're going to be doing in the module. And then I use, I encourage them to use the next button to move through. And so I leave a little reminder so that they can see to click on next, and that will move them through the pages in the order that I had hoped that they would go through. So let's see. I have a page right at the beginning for navigating in Canvas so that they are not feeling lost. And it gives them the student overview, and also for them that are going to be using their phones primarily, because we do have students that are still using their phone primarily, and I try to identify them, but especially in the beginning, they might try to do that. So an overview with the Canvas app. And then I use announcements very frequently in the class. So the next page is one that I adapted from the At One materials, and it has all the instructions for setting up their notifications and setting up so that they receive the announcements the way that they want to. And I remind them here that I use the announcements a couple of times a week, and that our past leader will also use announcements, so they know that this is something that they need to check frequently. I have an accessibility disclaimer that I set up after doing the accessibility training a couple of years ago that lets them know that I'm always working to improve the class, but also it reminds students about DSPS. And this frequently will prompt students to contact me and say, you know, I had accommodations in high school. Does that mean that I get them for this class? And then I can say, you know, definitely reach out to DSPS. They can give you more information. And so it's just a good reminder that DSPS is there for them, especially if they're new to campus. I always include a page with my contact information, and I try to demystify how they can reach out to me and how long they can expect before I respond, you know, those kinds of things. And I leave this in that first module so that if they need it, they can find it. And I also have a button on the home page where they can jump right to this page if they need this information. And then in the beginning module, I always include our course text. I use solely OER for my classes. And so this gives them a place where they can access all of the course materials that they're going to use throughout the semester. And then we start to get into more of the class specific expectations. So because it's an English 1A class, we do a lot of reading and response. And so I'm breaking down how they do the reading responses on this page. I'm giving them a sample of a reading response and the rubric that will be used for grading. And I try to show them things like rubrics and samples early on so that, again, they understand what I mean, they know the expectations, they get a sense of what kind of grader I am, what kind of instructor I am, what the expectations are going to be for the course. I always keep an updated supports page. And so in my class, we have past leaders, and then I include links for DSPS counseling, the library, which we use a lot in English, and the Canvas student resource page, so that if they need help with different aspects of Canvas for their different classes, they know they can come here and get to those Canvas resources. And even though it's on the syllabus, I've made a separate page trying to sort of demystify and highlight the grading practices and the way they check their grades, the way I'm going to be grading throughout the semester, you know, those kinds of things. So once they have finished reviewing all of the pages in the module, I have a quiz, and the quiz is just covering the things that were on those pages, and it's an opportunity for them to practice taking a quiz. Then before we move into our welcome discussion, I have guidelines for the discussion. So again, instructions, the rubric, and I include this infographic on rules for discussion boards and netiquette. And in an effort to make the class accessible, I also have a link to a text version of the infographic, which one of the attendees here in the session today actually made this text page to go along with the infographic. So I just wanted to stop and really quickly plug the idea of, you know, getting together with your colleagues and forming a group of folks that work together and talk about your Canvas sites on a regular basis, because we really can steal, borrow, share a lot of great ideas to make our classes better. and not have to duplicate all of that work. So we'll go to the next. Then I have expectations for the course on how to work with peers and what kind of work they can expect with their peers throughout the semester so that they know that they're not alone in the course. And then we start to actually introduce ourselves. So everyone records their name in name coach, so we know how to pronounce each other's names when we do recorded responses and what people prefer to be called. And then we do some introductions. So getting to know each other a little bit. I ask them to come up with questions for their peers, and that usually prompts a pretty lively discussion. You can see I've already opened my class and I've had about 10 students log in and start to introduce themselves, post questions for their peers, reply to each other. So the discussion is going pretty well so far. I'm going to skip over that. And then I have that second short module on pre-course assessments. Every one of my modules starts with this kind of overview, which I try to take the expectations for the week and the student learning outcomes for that unit and put them into a student-friendly language, sort of demystify the expectations for that week and give them a place where they can see their week at a glance, and also hyperlinks to get really quickly to any of the work that they need to do that week. They can use the hyperlinks or they can click next to keep moving through the module in order. And because students are lacking in resources for this, sudden transition to total online learning, I have them do a technology assessment right away, or I find out if they have the resources they need to be successful. And if not, I can refer them to the library or other options depending on their needs. Then I have a course assessment where we start to talk about ourselves as English students, our first prompts, and finally, our first turn it in assignment. So by the time they get to the end of week one, like I said before, they will have done a survey, a quiz, a basic text entry submission, a discussion forum, all of the things that we're going to use in future weeks. They'll have practiced those just through this getting to know each other, getting to know the class period. All right, so that's everything that I wanted to show you. I've gone a little bit over my time, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to the next person.
All right, how's everybody doing? My name is Nate Allen, math instructor here. So as you guys can see, Jackie's an all-star and I drew the short stick, so I get to go second. And so what I'm gonna basically just be showing you guys is not so much the ins and outs of how I run my class, but more so one specific thing that is rather new, so to speak, as all of this is to many of us. And that's gonna be I'm just gonna choose one of my classes. I'm choosing Trig, so I'm just at my dashboard homepage in Canvas. And you can see mine is much less beautiful than Jackie's, all right? So my homepage just takes you, I just try to keep things as simple as possible because our students are juggling a lot, and to get lost, for lack of a better term, in a web of all of this stuff that we're gonna be throwing at them with multiple classes, all the other things going on in their lives and in the universe right now. I just try to keep it very simple and just have weekly modules just like Jackie. And so I actually have a week 0 that starts with the syllabus quiz, introduction, kind of like Jackie had as well, to piggyback off of a lot of things that she did. So again, without being redundant, I won't go over all of those things, but I do send out an intro letter, and I make sure that I email that on WebAdvisor as well, just in case they don't have Canvas up and running. The problem with that is some of them are dropping, some of them are adding. So you got to be careful, make sure you maybe send that out again on Sunday or even Monday morning. But I like to post those things as well so that they have that at least accessible to them. But what I'm going to be focusing on is this thing called Studio. And Studio is within Canvas, and of course you can embed that. And so What I'm going to start by doing here is just showing you how to activate it. All right. So if you come down here and click on settings and you go to navigation, it may or may not already be on there. If not, you can click and either disable or enable if it's down here. These are all typically in order. And then once you have that going, just make sure that you save it. Otherwise, you might just move on and click the home page or wherever you want to go and it won't be there. So make sure you save that and it will be enabled over here. And remember, you can move these around to whatever you want them to be, any order. Okay. So I'm going to start by clicking on Studio. And you can see I've loaded a few here. For my 2 4A classes, I have a syllabus and I made it a quiz. So rather than meeting with them, which I've done in the past, which most of us do day one, I actually recorded it this time ahead of time, and I'll show you how you can actually make it a quiz and embed questions within it. Many times we meet, whether it's in class on day one or whatever, they're just like deer in headlights, right? They're checking out who's in their class, do they know anybody, what's the vibe with your class, what's your grading scale. Those key things that they want to know. And so what I did last semester was talk through just like an orientation like this. And our attention spans are getting worse and worse with everything that's going on, being at home, and all the things that come into play. And I'm just kidding, that was a joke. So what I like to do is now record these things to let them know, hey, you can kind of look at it at your own time. And then the cool thing about making it a quiz is that you can embed questions, things that you really want to make sure that they don't email you about, all 40 of them about the same topic. You can then ask questions and highlight those answers so that hopefully they don't have those after watching your video explanation and then highlighting it with a question as well. So I'm going to go over this and show you guys how to upload things. So you notice I clicked on Studio and it took me to this page. Now this took me a little while. I actually had to meet with our instructional designer to make sure that I could do this, because when I uploaded something, which you just go here to add, and you can either drag and drop or browse and connect an MP4 file, whatever you record it on, or if you uploaded it to YouTube, you can post the URL here. And once you add it, then it loads, shows here. Then you click on the 3 dots here. And when I did that, I didn't see the option, and all the things that I tried to look up on my own, it just said create a quiz. Well, that option wasn't there. So I'm like, well, what am I doing incorrectly, right? And so I'm trying to save you all some time. It's kind of weird. I don't know why it does this, but right now I'm in my Math 4A specific class. I have 2 of them. You have to click on the hamburger up here, right? And you have to go to My Library. So this is the key if you do plan on using Studio in any capacity. It looks the exact same. But notice it says My Library now instead of My Specific Course. Now if I go to any one of these, now you can see I do have that Create Quiz option. So that took a little bit of a headache for me to figure out, and wanted to make sure that you guys don't have those same issues. Okay, so I uploaded a video that I do, and let me just go back to my home page, which is the same as the modules, and just show you week 1 here. I again just keep it very simple, very clean. Sometimes less is more. And so I have group quizzes weekly that we'll be meeting and working together on, try to create that camaraderie. But then I have the section homeworks, and then I have my videos embedded in here as well. All right. So all of that you could also put into Canvas if you wanted. I just hyperlink them straight to going to my YouTube page. All right. And then their homework is right there underneath it. So just like Jackie had, just going to click on this. You can see that there are next buttons. Those are automatically on there. You can make sure that the students understand them. That's something that I'm going to go over after my syllabus quiz. I'm also going to have an orientation meeting so that I can answer any questions that they may have after they take it. So if you just click on that, it'll go to the next thing within that module. All right. So then I haven't opened that yet. There's the homework. All right. And then it'll take you straight to my video.
Hello, everyone.
You guys don't want to watch that. Who wants to watch math, right? So going back to the studio here, Again, see, it took me to my class. If I want to do anything within that, I got to go to my library. Okay, so just to kind of show you guys what a quiz would look like. Now, again, you can just view that and have the video embedded in there, but I wanted to create a quiz. And some of the perks about creating that quiz, again, name it whatever you want. You can either hide questions or keep them where little thumbnails so they know exactly where questions are. Now, obviously, you guys probably have the idea that hiding them will probably be best, because what are students going to do if they see those thumbnails? Click 3 seconds or maybe 2. They'll try to do their best. Maybe 1 second will be their best right before it so that it plays and then they can answer the question. Right? Or maybe they'll just scroll back about 5-10 seconds and say, all right, hopefully he tells me the answer then. All right, so I would suggest hiding them. Totally up to you on that. Hit the get started button. Now you can see this plus sign here and you can maximize it if you want. This is one thing that I was doing yesterday when I was creating mine. I actually sped it up because I didn't want to hear the whole 20 minutes or 10 minutes of it. I wanted to just figure out, okay, yeah, I want to focus on that. So I'll play a little bit for you.
What's going on, Drake family? Hope you're all doing well. The next section here that we're going to cover is basically the same as the last, given that we're now going to be taking approximations of these trait function values rather than the exact.
So right then and there, I'm like, okay, you know what? I want to actually add something. What are we going to learn? Right? And again, this is just basic stuff. You have 3 options. Okay, you can either ask a multiple choice question, true or false, or even have multiple answers. Okay, so whatever you guys want to do, true or false. And of course, we put the correct answer in, right? And then the cool thing is, whether you're doing true or false, or multiple answer, or any of the other options, you can do question feedback. And they have question feedback if it's multiple choice for the incorrect answers. What do you want them to know? The correct answers, do you want to add anything onto that? And it's pretty nice. You can really get your point across. And then you can save that. All right. So now you can see right there, it has a little edit button if you wanted to go back and try to edit it. Okay. Otherwise, you can skip ahead, start playing again.
But definitely going to need a calculator that has the trait function values on.
And there you go. So creating these videos, that's going to take you a little bit of time, obviously, but then adding in questions to really hit the points home, pretty nice. Okay. Just make sure that you are in the proper place within Studio. When you first click on it, remember, you're going to be like, wait, he said to just hit, where is it at? Remember, you have to go to the My Library, and it will show up for all of your classes. If you want to make quote unquote folders, then you can make collections there. Okay.
Hey, I have a question.
Yes,
Vanessa
sir.
Here. Is there a way to embed that quiz video in my homepage? Like, my homepage is different from yours in that I have like a welcome and a picture.
Yep, you beat me to it.
Okay, cool.
So I just wanted to kind of show you guys the syllabus quiz that I created. And you can see here, let me do this. Let me go back and I'll show you what it looks like to a student. And so you can see here on mine, I actually have it embedded in there. And I'll show you how to do that, Ernesto and everyone. But when they click on that, it'll take them to it. And you can either have it go to a separate or have it just open up within Canvas. And once they click on that and start watching it, they won't know. Obviously, you guys will, whether you have the thumbnails initiated or not, but they won't know where they are if you've hidden them.
Hey everyone, I want to introduce myself. My name is Nate Allen. I'll be your instructor for the course. I just want to at our orientation.
So they'd actually have to jump around and try to figure it out. They don't know where they are. So if you have videos that a lot of your students, like mine, weren't watching the whole thing, I could see on YouTube what the average was. And again, that's some people just clicking through, looking for specific things that, because I made mine public, but I didn't know how long they were watching it or if they were watching the whole thing. So the cool thing about this is you can actually go back and look at what the students watched, right? You can check out an item analysis and actually see how much they watched, where they watched, and obviously what their quiz results were. So it's really nice if you do and have created videos to just embed those in there and hopefully get a little bit better viewership. Hopefully even the entire thing. All right. So let's get to the next thing that Ernesto talked about. Let me go to my homepage or modules and let me show you how to embed that. Pretty simple if you guys have worked with Canvas, but I know a lot of us are new to this. So if you want to add anything, you just math, right? The plus sign. And then you go over here and instead of an assignment, you actually have to connect to an external tool. All right. So that external tool will bring up all the options here. And for us, we're going to go to Canvas Studio. Click on that. It'll have all the uploaded videos that you had on there. So I already have my 4A syllabus quiz. I'll input the one that we were starting on just to show you how it works, right? You can allow comments or not. You can embed it in there however you want to, all right? And then once you've done that, make sure you add the item, right? And it'll just come up as Canvas Studio. So you want to make sure that you go over here and edit it to look like whatever you want. Okay, and if you want to load it in a new tab, like I said, it'll open up, or you can keep it embedded within Canvas. It'll open in your course so that they're not getting distracted, which I highly recommend. You know how people can go down rabbit holes in YouTube. All right. So I don't know how many people will look at that, but hey, all right, name it whatever you want. Wanted to make sure that I showed you guys the ins and outs. And I think it's a pretty good tool that we have rather than going through and showing you everything because we're not all math people out there. All right. So if you guys have any questions, now's not the time. All right. I'm not an expert on this, but our instructional designer, Sue Yang, is awesome. Reach out to her and she'd more than likely be able to get back to you right away. I know the first couple of weeks is going to be tough, but she does have different links and things that she can send out to you. And hopefully she can even set up a either a video explaining this in more in depth or even have a little group meeting with you all. That's my time. I'll pass it on. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Martina Marquez Ramirez, and I teach child development. I wanted to go over a few things in my class as well and try to focus on things that you haven't heard yet. Okay, so this is my homepage, and the homepage stays this way for about 3 weeks or so because it's kind of like, you know, where to go, make sure that they know where they're at, they're in the right spot, how to get a hold of me, office hours, all of that, and then where to go next. So after about the 3rd week, after everybody's added, then I change the homepage every week to reflect what we're going to be covering in the class as a way to kind of make them excited about what we're covering, relate what we're covering to their own experiences. So hopefully they, you know, are interested. And then I also, as part of the diversity aspect of representing, making sure that my photos represent different ethnic backgrounds, you know, ages, genders, all that kind of thing. Also, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that I make sure the announcements are showing on the homepage. I'm not sure if everybody knows how to do that, but it's in settings that you can make sure that the most recent announcements show on the homepage, because not all students will go click on that announcements page or link. So I make sure that the most recent ones show up, so that way they're not missing any important announcements. I also make sure not only to do my own announcements, but also sharing things that are happening campus-wide in announcements so that they feel like, you know, there's a partnership. I'm still making sure that they know about things like transfer day or our psych services, things like that. So in this first day announcement, I have my welcome video that I used with Studio. The other thing about Studio that's really cool is that they caption really fast. So once you upload your video, you click on English and it's a matter of minutes that it is captioned, and it's easy to go and edit the captions. So, you know, that's what I really like about Studio. So I'm not going to show this video, but in the video, I do talk about the difference between global navigation, you know, which is over on the left side, course navigation. I go through how to send emails through Canvas, and then also breaking down, you know, how my class is organized. Okay. So we'll go back to, oh, the other thing about the course itself, I make sure that not very many things are showing that are visual for the student. So all of these things on the bottom that you see that are, the eyes are crossed out, are not visible, because I feel like the less they have to look at, the better. If you don't want them clicking around places, then don't make it visible for them. So if we go back to the home page, I'll take you to my Start Here module. So I just made a link there to do that. It's eventually I want to get to the buttons like Jackie had. Those are so beautiful, but I haven't made the time to do that. So my Start Here module, you know, it has a welcome message, video to get started. I go over, I give them lots of resources. I found that the more resources I give them up front, the better. Because I don't want to spend a lot of time dealing with tech issues. So I like to give them resources in many different places to make sure that they, you know, can find things on their own independently, and also they're not spending a lot of time asking me for technical help. So I found that to be very useful. My Start Here module is a little long, but I found that it really helps to minimize the amount of questions that I get in the first week. So a lot of these things are similar to what Jackie had, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but how to set up their notification preferences is really important, how to set up a photo, so that way, you know, we can see what they look like. So that is all really important stuff. This video I like to show, I would show it in class if we were in class, so letting them know what the services are on campus. And then about Netiquette. So this is similar to what Jackie had mentioned. I think it's really important to talk about this, especially now that, you know, everybody is online. And when we're talking about sensitive topics, you know, in my classes, we talk about child abuse and spanking and things like that, trauma. It can bring up a lot of things. So it's really important to kind of lay the ground rules for Netiquette and what's expected. And then I can, you know, refer back to this when we're talking about those we're having those difficult conversations, either, you know, in class or through discussions. And I'll just link back to this page and say, remember Netiquette, you know, remember to be respectful of each other's ideas, even if we don't agree. Another concept that we learned about with the equity-minded principles is this idea of being an imposter. And so it's the idea that many times students who come from diverse backgrounds do not feel that they belong in college. And so we want to make sure that they feel that they do belong here, they have a lot to bring to the table, and that maybe we had those feelings when we were in high school or in college, that maybe this was not the place for us. And so I like to kind of hit that idea home. It's in my syllabus and it's also there. So then this is our first discussion. One thing that I do that I want to highlight too is I put them into small groups. So this encourages them to have the same group of students that they're discussing with throughout the semester. So I have 40 students in this class. I group them into 4 groups. And the way you do that, I'll show you really quickly, is through the edit button. And then you click this box right here that says this is a group discussion. Sorry. And so you can name it. I named mine discussion groups, and you can tell Canvas how many students in each group, or how many groups do you want. So I just put 4 groups and it automatically signs them up. You can do allow self sign up. So if you're doing something where, you know, they're going to be working in groups and you want them to pick, you could do it that way as well. So I really like that. It really makes the the discussions richer, because as time goes on, they get to know each other a little bit more, and they're more willing to share and to have, you know, richer discussions. So after that, I have my syllabus, and I do use Simple Syllabus. I found it really user-friendly, and I learned a lot through the Marianne Valentino's training about how to make an equity-minded syllabus. And so I do recommend you watching that if you get a chance. But it's really nice to be able to have things already populated in the class. I try to put pictures in it to make it, you know, more interesting, and quotes to make it more, you know, motivating. And then it's nice that it kind of can just be carried over each semester. It doesn't take so long to write your syllabi. And then I have a syllabus quiz after that to get them going. Okay, then I'm going to get out of here and kind of show you. 1 second. Oh, what happened? I just lost my page. Okay, I'm sure. Sorry about that.
Okay, log back in.
Am I logged out? Oh my gosh, what happened? Wait, hold on. Sorry. Let me reshare.
That's okay.
That has never happened to me before, and of course it's happening right now. Okay, there. Are we back?
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show you is the Q&A cafe that I have for students, also to allow them to communicate with each other and to lean on each other for support. So it's a non-graded discussion board where they can talk to each other, ask each other questions. I also encourage them, like a couple of weeks after the semester starts, to form study groups, and they use this board to do that. They'll share, you know, email addresses and things like that to talk, and then I jump in as needed. If they get stuck on an idea, then I can jump in and answer the questions for them as well. So then I wanted to show you kind of how I organize each module. It's similar. I have a similar kind of flow, so it's predictable for them, and it doesn't, you know, they know what to expect. So I start each module with learning objectives and due dates, and then I have content pages. I also explain to them what all of these little icons mean in my welcome video, so that helps them know what everything is. And then they have the assignment, and then I end with kind of like a, yay, you did it kind of a thing. So I'll just go through this really quickly. So this is like what the learning objectives page looks like, a little intro to what we're going to be talking about, learning objectives from the chapter, the assignments, and then the due dates. So then they go through the content, read what they need to, get their assignments completed. And then at the end of the week, I do this little, you know, kind of a praise page, letting them know that this is what you completed, this is what you have to look forward to next week, and yay, you did it, right? So that they feel accomplished, they got something done, they did things right. So I think I'll end there. Thank you for your time.
Hello, I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, I was going to talk about model structure, but I think there's plenty of that, so I'm not going to go there. In my script analysis class, I actually have a couple collaborative projects that students do. And so I thought I'd talk about how I set that up. And then I also teach a class where the textbook is off-site, off-canvas. And so I'm going to show you how I set that up so that it makes it, you know, easily accessible for students. So starting with the script analysis, because that one is set up in a certain way that for each, I do the same thing. I have a table of your modules. The titles of your modules are a table of contents to your course, right? So each module, to lessen the amount of overwhelmingness, I give a table of contents also in each module. So that's what that first content page is. And then of course, similar to everyone else, that wrap it up one that kind of talks about what they're doing next week. But I was trying to figure out how with collaborative projects that you can get students to, so that you know that they're meeting and everyone's doing their part. And so what I've done was with the collaborative project, the table of content page sort of tells them what's going in there. And let me move some things so I can get to the next button. There we go. With that, I explained to them thoroughly what they're going to be doing. And in this project, they're writing a play together as a group. And group sizes just depend. I divide those groups up after the drop, actually really close to the project, because you do have students that drop, and then you'll have groups that are originally might have had 5 people in the group, and then you have 1 person in the group because 4 people that were in that group were the 4 people that dropped your class or stopped showing up. So I wait till about a week before, and then I break them up into their collaborations so that it's more likely that everyone in those groups are the actual people that are going to be there through the whole project. So I give them a breakdown of what they're needing to do. And then what I've done was to have them be able to show that they're meeting and working on their project weekly. I've made it so that I told them they do meet via Zoom or FaceTime or however they need to. They can do via phone as well. But they have to do an agenda and a minutes form, and that would be the assignment that they submit, and that shows me that they're actually progressing through the project the way that they're supposed to, and everybody's contributing. And if someone isn't there, they would notate that on that meeting minutes, and then I put down a rubric for it so that they can understand what needs to go into those minutes. And I also included for them a link to an agenda form and a minutes form so that they don't have to try and figure out what meeting minutes and agendas are all about. Let me go back to module view. Well, you can I'll hit next. From there, they go into their first assignment, and then they would submit that in. So with collaborations, it's really, this class has 2 collaborative projects. One is a playwriting project and one is a design project. And so the playwriting project, throughout each week, they have from week 6 to week 9, which is when the play is due, that they will be turning minutes in for each of those, along with other assignments. So right here, you can see I plopped in the assignment for creating the minutes or submitting their minutes and agenda, and it'll go until they actually submit the project. And if you've not ever done a collaboration, you would do that under people. So click on people, you have group projects here. So I haven't created the group project in this class yet because I'm still working on the class, but you can go ahead and add a group, type in, I'll just, play, and then you can limit the number of people that are in a group. Right now, I'll just say 5. And then what happens is eventually you can go ahead and start adding the students in there. Once the course starts, that's when you would be able to do that. I'm not going to do it right now because I don't want to do it because I don't know who's going to be in the class by that time anyway. So, but all of these students will eventually, you can do a random sort into groups. And so then they'll just randomly get put in there and one student gets put in charge. Or you can actually break them up manually and say, I want these 3 students to work together, these 3 students, and so forth. And then with those collaborations, each group is given their own Canvas website. And that website, they could go ahead and collaborate in. So they can create discussions or announcements saying, hey, the meeting for this week is going to be at whatever time. So it's a way for them to communicate if they don't want to share phone numbers. Last semester when I did it, half of the groups used the websites and half of them, they just communicated via text and set up meetings that way. But they all turned in minutes and agendas and minutes to explain, what they've been working on throughout. And it's a good way to make sure that they are going to actually be completed with the project, or if they need some of your assistance or guidance, because then you can hop into, find out when their meetings are and hop into it and help them out or give them a little more guidance if they need it, which is really good, especially with the group projects when you're dealing with a virtual world. It's a lot harder to manage than when you're in a regular one. One thing that I do in this course, because this course has only been online for, you know, fall semester. It's the first time it's ever been online. So I added a check-in a check-in survey at week 3. And what it does is it's specifically to check, let me go student view here, specifically to check kind of the pacing of the course. And I locked it. Let me go back. Check the pacing of the course so that students can kind of give me some feedback based on how much, if I'm giving them too much work and they're not able to keep up, they're starting to fall behind, or if the pacing's really good, if it's manageable and they feel comfortable with it, it helps me to make little adjustments here and there as needed to shape the course. And it takes 3 semesters for you to get your online course to really be shaped in a way that the fixes are really minimal. It's little things. It takes 3 semesters. I've been teaching online for 12 years, and no matter how many times you do it, it doesn't change. It's 3 semesters at least to get it all tweaked out. And so what I do is I offer it at the 3-week point, because that's just before the last day that they can drop without a W. And then I offer it again at midterm. And then at the very end of the semester, I have a wrap it up discussion. And the wrap it up discussion it's really, again, to get course feedback for me to make this course better for them. So it's specifically about, I missed my touch screen. It's not in this one. It's specifically about what did they like about the course and what needed to be, what they would think would help the course to be better or easier to navigate. So that's really how to do collaborations. And you kind of saw really quickly as I scrolled through the module setups, but the module setups for my script analysis are very similar to this. I did this in my sandbox because I was prepping it for other faculty members to use to teach the theater appreciation online. And this specific course, we just switched to a textbook that is an e-textbook, and that's the resources for that textbook are off the site and the textbook itself is off site. So I wanted to make sure that the students could find it more easily, because I worked with one of the criminal justice instructors last semester, and that was a challenge that he was having, was getting students to go to the off-site textbook and knowing how to find it. So I thought, well, the best way to do this is, number one, I made an announcement in there that will pop up right off of the beginning of the semester saying that they can purchase their textbook here, and it kind of gives them the resource information for the link that they need. And then next, I wanted to give them an idea of seeing ahead of time what you're looking for helps you to find it easier, right? So I wanted to give them a little insight as to what it's going to look like. So I literally just screenshot the textbook page so they could see, okay, this is what it looks like. And then I explained to them in there, in this page, you know, this is what we're doing, this is how we're using it. And when you go to access it for the first time using your access code, you know, this is how you go about it. And then I also included a screenshot PowerPoint step by step when they're going through the access code to see what it looks like. And then showed them the chapters that are in there. From there, it goes into chapter 1. So each module is going to, it has this content page for each chapter, so that they know, okay, I'm going to Kendall Hunt to do this. I'm going to read the chapter, watch the PowerPoint, and do the quiz. And so all that's the stuff that's there. But when they get into the next modules, let's go to module 2 here, they have that, but they also have to come in and do the plot maps and stuff too. So I have that content page right here for the textbook, but the content page for the whole module tells them everything that they're doing for that. So I want to make sure that they have it in complete of the module, meaning that they have the textbook stuff, but then because we have assignments that happen on Canvas and not at the textbook site, they need to know that. And it makes it easier if it's all in one place. The other thing you can tell, let me go into student view on this so you can see. I limit the navigation a lot because I've found that if I have quizzes and assignments and discussions all in there, they don't go through the content in my modules at all. So if my lecture for my module is there for the class, they don't see that. And so then three weeks into the semester, you're going to realize people are not passing their quizzes very well, and you can't figure out why, because everything is there. It's because they don't even know that there's lectures here. So by having the module be the only link that they can click on to take them to access those things like discussions and assignments and lectures, it forces them to go through that. And you want to make sure they actually go through that. And I did a welcome video that explained all of this, but I left the quizzes tab there. And that's exactly what they did. They go straight to the quizzes. And then you get a message from someone 3 weeks in that says, is there a lecture that goes with these quizzes? And you realize that they're not going through the modules. So then you have to take that link out. So the fewer choices they have in the navigational panel here, the more likely they will not get lost in your course. Okay. So I am going to end there and pass on to Sally.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see. I do want to share with you, hold on just a second here. Let me see what I want to share. Oh yeah, this is it right here. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay, so a couple things. Unfortunately, we are running a little behind time, so we're not going to be able to get to the activity, the breakout groups. So you can relax. I'm not going to make you get into groups and talk. So just relax. You can just think in your mind, reflect on what some of these awesome features and things that you've seen that you're going to incorporate into your class, and think about some of the cool things that you're going to share with your colleagues that weren't able to get here. And I told you that this was going to be really fun. This is so cool to see what other people are doing, and it is also fun to share your own stuff that you've put together. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a couple of things. Actually, I do want to show you my homepage. It is featuring Snoop Doggy Dog. And I don't know if this was going around last semester. I believe it was the first week of September. So I didn't get this in at the very beginning of my course, but I just want to show you this video.
A message from Big Snoop Deal Double G to all the university students. Yo, syllabus. You gotta do it. You gotta read it. Man, I'm telling you, the more you know, the further you go. Tell them Snoop Dogg sent you. Syllabus. I know all about it. Catch up so we can have a conversation. Don't be late. Let's go.
Okay, so this is my my gift to you. I will hold on, I definitely don't want to play this again.
A message from Big Snoop Deal Double G to all the university students.
Sorry about that. But I am going to give this to you in the chat. It is pasted in my YouTube channel, and I did put captions on it, so it is accessible. You can throw it up there. I can tell you that if you have any students that are in their mid to late 40s, they will think that you are super cool. But other than that, I cannot vouch. So that's that. Okay. So anyway, go ahead and you're free to use that. And then what do we have here? Okay, want to get rid of that. Okay, so this is my homepage, and I do switch this up. Oh, it looks like some of my buttons are not appearing. I don't know why, but they usually don't have a problem. I think my computer is just being overloaded with YouTube right now. So this is what my homepage looks like, and it's not, oh, I just published it this morning. I don't have my modules published. Oh, reload here. Okay, let's see. Jackie's telling me to reload. And okay, well, maybe they will, maybe they won't. Okay, it's taking a while. My kids are also playing video games probably right now. That's not helping me. Okay, so anyway, so this is what my homepage looks like, and I do change it every week, like Martina was saying, and I have students, I give like a little bit of a, just a preview of what's going on that week, and then not really a link to anything. I don't have the modules page open right now because I'm not quite ready. As soon as we're done here today, I'm going to open up my first module, but I have published my course. I didn't make any announcements yet. I do have the announcements set up so that the top 2 announcements will show up on the homepage, like some of the other presenters did. But what I do want to show you is actually my modules. And I wanted to show you kind of the end of my course, okay? And I do have a real similar module structure. I have, for each week, I have an opening, kind of a opening page, kind of that gives the overview, and it has objectives, and I see some of my things are still trying to load here. It has everything that they're going to do this week, connected to objectives for the class, so they can get a snapshot of what's going on. But this is towards the end of the course. And so for Linguistics 10, it is truly a survey course. And so what it is many different topics, and we cover each topic like for 1 to 2 weeks, just bounce from one topic to the next topic to the next topic. And so at the end of the course, we typically do a short research paper where they choose one topic and they do a little bit more research. And so the research paper it's a real short 2 to 3 page research project. And so what I'm going to show you is a kind of way to break down this research project, or kind of scaffold that. And so what I've got is, this is going to appear actually 3 weeks before, or actually 4 weeks. So this is in week 15. And this is a kind of, it's called a scaffolding. This is the first step to their research paper, thinking of your topic, okay? And I actually have them submit something. So this is worth 10 points. And they just, start thinking about, it's coming up in a few weeks, start thinking about what your topic is. Here's a list of topics you might be interested in. If there's something else that you can think of, let me know. When they, submit good ones that I haven't thought of, I just go ahead and add it to this list. Usually they don't though, they just choose one of these. And then that's like the first step, okay? So that's first step of doing a research paper, choosing the topic. Next step, okay, sign up to locate articles. So again, this is sort of the next little baby step. And what I've done here is I am using our library resources. So what I've got is they have to choose, they have to make a choice. They have to connect with a librarian. They have to make one of these choices. So our librarians have these wonderful webinars that they've put together. And I actually made a video of how to do this. Okay, so really quick, let me show you exactly what to do on this page, because this is one of the choices that you have for the research assignment. So what you can do
is
This is from last
come down
semester.
here to register for a webinar. And there are a couple of them that I want you to choose from. So the Google one, no, don't use Google. We're not using Google for this. We're going to use one of the databases. And one of the databases is called Ebscohost.
Okay, so I'm just walking them through, you know, how to do that. Now, this is the actual link to the library webinar page. And they haven't, the librarians haven't posted them yet. It says here, check back in January, so I'm expecting those to be up. But they do have their list of webinars, and I don't remember, I don't think that they have the whole entire semester laid out. I think they just have like a month, maybe, or a couple months laid out. But what they do have, and what is a great choice, is they have, and I explained this in the video, they have this one option where Linda Kay has recorded one of her webinars. So for students who just can't make any of the times, because the times are like 10 a.m., 2 p.m., you know, Monday through Friday, they can't make those. They can just watch the recording. You know, it's not as good because they can't interact with her and ask questions, but fine, they can just watch it. That's fine. So that is also an option. So that's choice number one. They can do that, or they can do a wrap session. And if you're not familiar with wrap sessions, oh my gosh, this is like the mother lode of research. Students can make an appointment with the librarian one-on-one. It's about 45 minutes. They sit down with the librarian, they have their research, you know, assignment, and they talk to them, and the librarian walks them through how to do the research. It is awesome, okay? They get, in this 45 minutes, probably what would take a student like multiple hours, days, weeks to do. And they learn so much about how to, you know, it's this tailored to them. It's this one-on-one thing. I mean, it was just like the best ever. And also, as a bonus, for instructors, you get this nice little message from librarians that, you know, that, oh my gosh, we're going over. This nice little message from librarians thanking you for sending their students. Okay, so that's all that I wanted to show you. Thank you so much for attending. I'm going to stop sharing right now. I will continue to hang around. If anyone has any questions or anything like that, I'm just going to hang around for a few minutes. And if you want to ask me questions, I think the recording is still going, but we'll turn that off in just a second. And yeah, actually, I'm going to put up the contact information for our presenters real quick. If you want, I'll track that down if you wanted to look at that. If not, thank you very much. Have a great start of your semester, and look forward to seeing you all in Zoom meetings. If not, I don't know, a year from now, walking around campus. All right, bye everybody.
For those of you that are still on, also just as a reminder to fill out your evaluation for this session on the online event guide. I did put a link in the chat, and I'll put it in there again since some comments have come through. I also want to thank all the presenters for their time today, and for all of the interpreters. So thank you to Seth and to Jennifer.
Are we able to ask some questions, or are we done?
No, go for it.
I am developing a class. So yeah, so last semester, you know, we kind of went online. So it was just basically delivering synchronous stuff. But this semester I'm developing the course specifically to be an online course. And I have a lot of pages, content pages in my modules. And some of the examples that were given, I didn't see as many. And so I'm just curious, on average, how many content pages would you have in the module when you're trying to deliver the material, but not have a recorded lecture?
So that is sort of a matter of kind of teaching style. So there's some different philosophies on that. Let's see how many people are in here. You don't want to have this discussion right now. So yeah, so my personal style and belief is that the less clicking that students can do, the better, right? So what I like to do is actually, while I'm here.
So would you have like a really rich content page that's really long rather than having
Yeah,
them
so
flip
I don't
through,
have
let's say,
very many,
5?
I don't have actually many pages at all. So what I do have, and I didn't really, yeah, I didn't get a chance to, it was just, I just talk too much. I didn't get a chance to show you too much, but so here's my quiz. So there's 2 different ways to deliver this, okay? So one of the things I can do is I can make a page and I can put my video in my page or in my module, or I can just, you know, upload my video as in my module. And then the next step could be, I could put this, this is a chapter from a textbook. I could put that there. So students would, when they're looking in the module, they have to click next, click to watch the video, and then click next to watch the page. But that's all they do, right? And then they have to click next and then take the quiz. But then they might have to go back to the video, back to the article. And so I don't want them to do that. And, you know, there are some courses, like, for example, when I teach English 1A, this is a different kind of course. So, you know, but, you know, English 1A is really like a skills building class where, you know, you're taking like the skills and you're really building upon them. And so what they learn in, you know, this thing, they really have to use on a larger scale, you know, at the very end of the, so there might be a difference, but this is kind of a content course where they learn some material and then they apply it. They learn some material and then they apply it. So what I like to do, instead of having them watch the video, click, read the thing, click, take the quiz, I like to give them the quiz, and inside the quiz, they watch the video, read the directions. What are they doing? Watch the video, read, okay, now they're ready, read, okay, take the quiz. Everything's right there. So that way, when they're in their module, when they're looking at the module, they don't actually have very many things inside their module. There's only, you know, this is a page, yes, but it's just the start page. So there's only really 3 things inside the module, but there's 3 assignments. The other advantage of this is that when this, because, you know, it appears on their to-do list and in their calendar. So when this quiz appears in their to-do list and they click on it, it just takes them straight to the materials as well. They don't have to use that previous button to get back to the materials. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
So instead of thinking about the number of pages that you have, I think it's better to think about the amount of assignments or the amount of work that you're giving them, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm trying to get away from using the textbook at all. So I think I'm putting in a lot of content in the pages in the hopes that, you know, the following semesters we won't need the book. And so, you know, but I also don't want to overwhelm with like constant clicking so much information, but also not giving them so much that they just start scanning.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a balance, right?
Okay.
So on one hand, you know, like I spent a lot of time with Jackie Williams, and we kind of, you know, like do our things kind of similar. And you know, in her English class, she kind of has the opposite. So her modules are really long. She has a lot of elements in each module, but each one's real short. So each time you click, it's sort of a separate thing, but it's small, kind of a chunk, a little tiny chunk. So they just read, they just do something, or they think it, and then they go to the next thing. Now, you know, and that's just her style, you know. So her students read a little chunk, click, read another chunk, click, like that. For me, my students click less, but they have to scroll more. So they have a lot. Right. So I have to I'm very intentional about breaking things up with pictures, breaking things up with, you know, lists and bullet point, you know, like, so it's not a huge wall of text. But that's, you know, again, that's my design style, because it's my online teaching style. That's Jackie's online teaching style. If that makes sense.
Hi, Sally. Can I add a little bit on what Nora and Sally? I just wanted to add a little bit in there. I'm a photo.
Absolutely, all ears.
By the way, my name is Margie, and I'm an adjunct photo instructor. So at the beginning, my student, I have to ask my student what they wanted, right? But all of a sudden, my husband took a class for a whole year for certification. and I could hear his frustration. So I'm the teacher, right? But he's taking class in Fresno City College, and I could hear his frustration, and on Rio College. So I could hear his frustration. And as I hear it, I didn't tell him what I was doing. I would start writing things that he's saying that was frustrating to him. And he just blurted out like, oh, why does this teacher do this a lot? And so I would write those things. And the couple of things that I heard a lot about him, and I confirm it with my own student, is they actually doesn't like when there's one tab and there's so many tabs in that one tab, because they felt like they will get lost. And they also doesn't like clicking away from Canvas all the time. If they can consolidate it in Canvas, they like that better. So the combination of things that I'm learning from you guys from the past, and from my student and my husband, I have a year to examine, and then that he doesn't know I was examining. And what I did, which works a lot, is my modules, it has 7. And I make sure it has 7, because we have 18 modules in Photo 5. And I want to make sure that everything is uniform and concise. So by the 4th week, by 3rd or 4th week, they already know the system. And I told them, if you follow the system step by step, your brain would automatically know what goes next. So I would have my introduction, right? Whatever SLO, what they're gonna learn that day. And then I would have my lectures. So maybe 3 lectures, but short lectures, but 3. And then I would have my assignment, that module. And then I would have after my lecture, I put my quiz. And after my quiz, I would have my project. And then after my project, I would have an extra credit. So, but it's always 7 in a module.
Yeah, and that's actually exactly what Jackie does on hers. Yeah. So she has, so what she does, and she's like, like you saw her module, it's like really beautiful. It has all these like design elements, but she just makes it once, and then she just duplicates. So you can just duplicate the whole thing, and then she just uses the same form module every single week. For me, I don't know. I don't.
The difference.
I'm afraid that I don't want to give students any extra work, so that's only my only fear on that, like I don't want them to have, well, there's not really any discussion topics this week, but I want to make them have a discussion just for discussion's sake, so that is my only fear about that. But I do agree that is absolutely, it's like, it just cuts down this cognitive load that students have. And I will tell you that I have 2 teenage sons that are doing online high school right now. And oh my gosh, eye-opening to me, like their frustration at the different things, is just like, things that I just never like knew, just some, I feel for these high school teachers, but then at the same time, it's like, what are you thinking? Like, how are you, these instructions that they're giving them are just so bad. They're just so bad. Yeah, for sure.
So as far as for,
yeah.
Okay, Nora, so when I had gone through training too, one thing that they recommended when you're talking about content pages is like to put a little note at the top about why that's important. Because as a student, they're going to go look through the things and say, I don't have to read that. That doesn't look like that's on my quiz. It's not related to a discussion, skipping it if there's too much. So what I like to do, if I'm going to show a video and have some content, I'm going to say, this is going to be really important for quiz number 10, or this is really important for your first observation assignment. Because that way there's buy-in, like, oh, I better read this page. And then you might want to just, because if there's lots of pages, they're going to pick and choose. So you might want to kind of, tighten it up.
And that is really the piece that when we're going from face-to-face to online, that's missing, right? So when you're in your face-to-face class and you're handing out this handout or about to show a video, that's what you would say to them. You would say, okay, what you're about to watch is going to be important. You're going to need it or somebody will ask about that. So it's like those little things that is missing in this online environment. Like that's the kind of little notes, these little kind of aside notes or whatever, little asterisk with italics up at the top. Yeah, this isn't going to be used in this quiz on this date, or what, or you're going to need this for the future. Make sure you say, remember this, or yeah, that's absolutely. Instead of just giving it to them and then they just expecting them to know to read it, they won't.
And then just find a rhythm. Find a rhythm to your page.
Go ahead. I'm on my phone, so it's hard to. Okay, rhythm. I got it.
Yeah, if you can get, and if that rhythm just sort of repeats itself throughout, then you're fine. It doesn't have to be like you offer a discussion every week. You might have an assignment one week, a discussion another, but have a rhythm of information for them rather than making it kind of.
Yeah, one other thing that really didn't come up, and I'm sorry that this didn't, I can't believe out of all of us this didn't come up, but really having like your set days of the week that assignments are due. So in my class, Wednesday and Sunday, only and every Wednesday and Sunday, there's something due, every single Wednesday and Sunday. Yeah. And they just know that sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it's two smaller things, but they always have something due on Wednesday and Sunday. And they just know that.
So to that point, for those of you who have taught online more than just one semester, what quantity of work do you find is a fair amount that they don't get overwhelmed? Because right now I have like 2 discussions and 2 assignments each week, sometimes a quiz, but I'm still trying to balance it out. And so I'm curious with all the clicking that they're doing, content.
Yeah, because you have to think about how long will it take them to go through all of that information that you're giving them, and then how long will it take them to do the assignment. So depending upon the assignment, if it's an assignment that once they've gone through the content, like it's a discussion and it'll probably take up 20 minutes or whatnot to do, right, to contribute and then post on other people, then you're okay. But if you're talking about like an assignment that's going to take them several hours to do, then you have to think, okay, maybe that's the only assignment I have for that week. Right? So if it's a short multiple choice quiz, it's like maybe 10 questions and a discussion, then it's fine. But if you're having a short multiple choice quiz and a discussion, and then the research paper that, is a 10-page research paper is due at that point, you might want to consider eliminating one of the, the quiz or the discussion, one or the other, that specific week that research paper is due. So, but think 3 units, 9 hours.
Okay, good.
Yeah, thinking about your Carnegie units, right? So 3 units is 6 to 9 hours of work. Now that's probably for like the student that takes the longest. So if you can imagine, like not the student that's the speediest, but the one that's going to take the longest should take about 9 hours. But then that's an average, right? So that's not every single week, but on average, that's about what they should have. But I was reading a few weeks ago, I think it was over the break maybe, I read an interesting article that was talking about how, and this was the case for, not necessarily for community college, I think it was more university students, how there's this huge disconnect right now since they've gone online between the amount of work that the students perceive that they're doing now compared to the, before we went online, and the amount of work that the instructor or professors perceive that they're giving. So right now, students are like totally overwhelmed. They think that they're doing so much work, way more work than they used to do. This is like so overwhelming. Their teachers are giving them so much work. At the same time, professors are like, we're hardly giving anything. We're paring down our class. We're making it so simple. We're giving bare bones, hardly assigning anything at all. Why? What is the disconnect here?
Technology.
Well, partly, but what the thesis of this article is that professors assume that students are reading textbook chapters, first word to last word, making notes, spending hours and hours, rewriting their notes, lecture notes, rewriting those, studying all these times, spending hours and hours rewriting their papers, putting in so much time. Students don't do that. No, they do minimum. If it's not required, they're not going to do it. They spend the absolute least amount of time it takes to do something. They go to class. They don't even perceive going to class as even time, as homework or time in their class. So they don't even count that as time. So they're just thinking like, oh, this, you know, this econ class I used to take, I used to have a couple hours of homework. Now what the frick, I'm taking like 10 to 12 hours a week to do it. This is ridiculous. It's like they don't see the, you know, where their teacher is thinking that they were doing all this work in the past, they really weren't. And so that's might be part of it too.
Yeah, and then the other part is the fact that, you know, the Wi-Fi is slower, things load slower, things happen slower. So what might, you know, in face-to-face, you go through it in an hour, it's taking them an hour and a half to 2 hours to get through it because the Wi-Fi keeps cutting out or the page takes forever to load. So, and when it does that, then they tend to like skim over things even worse, because now it's not just the fact that it's a lot of content, but it's that I can't get to the content because it takes forever for it to load on my phone or on my laptop.
And in between, you got to help your kids with their work. You got to make them breakfast. You got to do all the other stuff that you got to do, where before you were just in the library studying for an hour, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really interesting. So then how do you provide the same quality, you know, that you did when you were in the classroom with all the stories in the background and the interesting ideas that motivates them to do more?
I mean, you know, you just, it's like incrementally, we just have to try to take steps, you know, on our own, I believe, to just get better each time and to just make our class, you know, and to reach our students. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah,
this.
and I recommend doing that survey that, you know, 3 weeks in, and just say, hey, how is the pacing on this course? Are you feeling okay about it? Are you feeling overwhelmed? You know, let them pick which one. If you notice that everybody, you know, 90% of the classes are like, I'm overwhelmed, then you can say, okay, maybe I need to reevaluate a little bit, shave a little bit, or do something. You know, you can ask follow-up questions. What is making you feel overwhelmed? If it's say outside life, well, then there's not much you can do about that. But if it's, well, you know, I'm trying to get through the material and I can't seem to get through it all at this time because I'm fighting with the Wi-Fi, that's something that you might be able to work with a little bit. So that's that 3 week in survey will benefit you as to the remainder of how you have your semester set up.
That's a great suggestion. I will definitely do that after seeing what you did there. There was a checkbox on my list for sure. And Sally, my class is similar to yours, a survey class. So there are so many topics to cover in 18 weeks, and I want to tell them all the things. So you know, you really have to pare it down and take away a lot. So I'll have to grok on that a little bit, but everything will go faster.
The survey classes too, the details are the most interesting thing. So it's like, right. I'm going to get through the general stuff and get to like the details, and yeah, and it can be challenging, but you know, yeah.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you everybody for staying behind and answering all the questions. I really appreciate your input and experience. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm no longer everybody's back to school now, so I'm going to have to go. But thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I learned a lot during this session. It's incredibly valuable. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Okay, so I guess we're still recording. I didn't realize that.